Welcome to It Happened in Grand Prairie, Texas, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that have made history in the past and some that are making history even today. And we are very, very excited. This is our history tape number 604. And 604 is a magic number today because we have a wonderful ex-Marine, and they say when you're once a Marine, you're always a Marine and not an ex-Marine. And Arvin Brown is of that stature here in Grand Prairie, Texas. Long time resident of Grand Prairie, Texas, and a young man that recently was honored by Congressman Kenny Marchant. And it is just exciting that we have him on the set today because he is so busy doing volunteer work at the Methodist Hospital and many other things in Grand Prairie and probably all of the Metroplex, because he is a retired young man, and I'm going to let him tell you about some of his retirement. Arvin Brown, welcome to the set.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. It's my pleasure to be here. And of course, the purpose of my being here is to thank Mr. Marchant, our congressman from the 24th District,
Yes.
for him and Mr. Hayes going to the trouble of researching military background of some of the members of the service that live in Grand Prairie and others in his district. And he got records and researched back 50 years ago when I was in Korea, found out that there were medals that were due to be awarded that never were presented, and he's obtained these medals.
And isn't that exciting?
And it's really a nice thing that he did and Mr. John Hayes did to step forward and do this for the veterans.
And you're not the only veteran in Grand Prairie. We
No.
have 5 veterans from Grand Prairie, and one of them, of course, is deceased, and that was my brother-in-law, Ernie Seymour. But his wife did get all of the medals that he had earned and had not been presented. So we're going to try to get around to all of those, and Benton Ford and some of the others that received medals that they didn't really know you had, did you?
He's come up with some medals that I should have been awarded that they didn't have a record of, and you have to submit a form application to get these other medals, a DD 215, and the ones that you get, the records you get when you get out of the service, is a DD 214. They add these other medals to your record and send them to you, and some of them are still yet to come. But when I get those, that'll just put them in the box with these.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Be nice for the grandchildren to have.
They certainly will. Now, Arvin Brown, I need to get a little bit more of an in-depth interview, and we're going to leave all of these things about the medals aside for a moment,
Okay.
and then we're going to talk about the real Arvin Brown. C-O-M-I-L-U-S. Camellus
That's pronounced
is your
Camellus.
first name?
Yes.
Camellus?
Camellus Arvin Brown.
You know, that's an exciting name, and tell me how you came by that name.
My father's name was Camellus.
Uh-huh.
He was constable in Grand Prairie, as a lot of people know, for
Yeah.
about 30 years.
Was he called Camellus when he was here?
He was called DT. His initials were DT, and then he had a name of Camellus, and then Brown, of course.
Yes.
And he was called Camellus by most of the people, like Mr. Marler and the old timers in Grand Prairie called him Camellus.
And he was the deputy?
Well, at one time he was deputy sheriff with Bill Decker,
Yes.
and everybody.
But then he
around
became
probably
constable
remembers
out
him.
here.
Then he became constable in Grand Prairie, Texas, and it was called Precinct 6 at that time. And he had one deputy and furnished his own car.
Well, tell me this. Were you born in Grand Prairie, Texas?
I was born in Grand Prairie.
Oh, you were born in Grand Prairie. Give us the magic date of your birth.
The magic date is January the 4th, 1929.
1929.
29. I'm almost January the 4th. I'll be 79 years old.
Oh, that is magic. And having a dad that was a constable, was he pretty strict on you all, Arvin?
Well, he had jobs for me to do growing up, like milking cows and tending to a garden and he thought it all to work all the time, which I did.
Yes.
I grew up knowing that I had to get up in the morning and go to work.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Had one brother that lived with us here, and had 4 sisters that lived here, and we lived most of the time at 130 North Street,
Yes.
which is a block north of Church Street.
Yes.
And at the 100 block, it's pretty close to the corner and pretty close to downtown.
Yes, it is.
So when I was 12 years old, I went to work. You asked for a background. I went to work for the Wings Theater,
Oh, you did?
and I took tickets for Mr. Roy Starling all through high school, changed the marquee, cleaned the theater out, pop popcorn, everything you do in a picture show.
Yeah.
And Mr. Starling owned the Texas Theater at the time. He bought Mr. Walker's show called the Texas, which is down around where the Uptown is now.
Yeah.
And they're rehabbing the Uptown. But he bought that picture show, and then we had both of them to run.
Yes.
And I also worked for a man named Roy Reed.
The grocery man,
Groceries.
Roy Reed? Uh-huh.
And I went in and cleaned his meat racks twice a week, washed them, scrubbed them down, hot soapy water, and then rinsed them off with clean water and put them back in the refrigerator, and he put his meat back in there.
All right. Now, what schools did you attend in Grand
I
Prairie?
went to Southside Grammar School,
Yes, I know about Southside,
and then I went to Grand Prairie High School.
which was the old 11th grade building, the red building next.
It was an auditorium up there,
Yeah.
and of course the old high school that I went to was a red brick building, been torn down years ago.
Yes. And you graduated in what magic year?
I graduated in 1947.
1947 is your alumnus year. Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
And so as an ex-gopher, and after you got out of high school, what happened to Arvin?
Well, I was advertising manager for the school paper.
All right.
Got to go to places like Dewey Miller
All right.
and sell ads for the
Okay.
high school paper. And when I graduated, I went to work for a company called Dallas Power and Light.
Dallas Power and Light. That's
I had a friend that worked there that knew my dad quite well. His name was John Carlisle Thompson.
Yes.
And he said to tell them when I got over there that I knew Mr. Thompson, and that he would recommend me to go to work.
I see.
And when I went over, they called Mr. Thompson, and sure enough, he was our chief inspector,
Yes.
well thought of. So hey, they hired me.
Yes.
I went to work making $96 a month, $45 every 2 weeks. Of that $45, I spent 15 cents a day for lunch.
All right. Now, after you worked at the Dallas Power and Light, for where my dad helped get you a job. My
Yes.
dad was John Thompson. He was really known, had all sorts of names. He was Tommy Thompson and an electrician in
Right.
town and all of the good stuff. But when did you get into the Marines?
When we were in high school, a lot of us, about some of the people named Freddie Knox, Kenneth Ferrens, Bobby Donaldson, Potter,
Milton Potter, okay.
and a lot of us in Grand Prairie.
Buck Smith.
Buck Smith. We had all joined the Marine Reserve Unit in Grand Prairie at
Oh, you
Naval Air
had?
Station.
Uh-huh.
And we thought the war was coming pretty strong, and we all wanted to be in the Marine Corps because we felt like the Marines were, if we're going to have to fight, let's do it with the best.
Yes, and you all went together, didn't you?
We all wanted to be together. It didn't turn out that way, but as many things are in the military, they don't turn out the way they tell you it's going to happen. It didn't happen. They sent me and John Elvis Beeman and Ralph Barris to a tank battalion. We sent them to a tank battalion, and they sent me over to Korea in 1950 when the war started.
Yeah.
I forget what year it was. They sent me to Korea, and the most saddest feeling in my life was when we left San Diego, marching down the street with a band playing. I had my M1 rifle on my shoulder,
Yes.
95-pound pack on my back with a steel helmet, and we marched down and boarded ship, and then the ship started pulling away from the dock there in San Diego.
Yes.
Well, that was pretty sad because I didn't understand why a nice guy like me was leaving the United States. This is where I
Yes.
lived and loved, and everybody was here, but I wasn't going to be here with them.
Yes.
Well, we got over to Korea, and they offloaded us from the fantail of the ship, sent us by plane to Atami. Well, we went by train to Atami, and from Atami, we caught an airplane and went to Korea. Well, they were waiting on us in Korea to get there.
Yeah.
So we immediately filled in the spots where we were supposed to be assigned and did our job. But
what was your title in the Marines?
I was a gunnery sergeant.
A gunnery
I
sergeant.
was a gunnery sergeant.
What did that mean?
Well, it meant that I was supposed to be an NCO, non-commissioned officer, and I was to have charge of a certain number of people, tell them what to do, lead them in whatever they needed done.
I see. Okay.
I was trained by that time when we went to Korea to be an operations chief, a logistics chief, and a gunnery sergeant. And did I say administrative chief? All of that. They schooled me in how to do all of the, how to order 100-pound bombs and 50-pound bombs and napalm and machine 20 millimeter and all for the aircraft for the 1st Marine Air Wing.
Okay.
And we did that, and 100-pound bombs. We went up top of the hill and built a landing strip for the Corsairs to land on off of one of the aircraft carriers that flew in. Well, the first thing that happened was one of those 100-pound bombs come loose and went to tumbling down the runway.
Oh my.
And it was armed.
Oh my.
Naturally, when those bombs are put on the plane, they're armed with and so they will go off. But that one just luckily didn't go off and blow a hole in the ground. But I stayed there at K3 Korea, went to K9 Korea, K47. These are different areas assigned
of the sign.
In the Marine Corps, and I forget the names of all the little places they were over there.
When did you get out of the Korea and come back?
I left Korea and come home. They're on the discharges, and I went back. I had to report to 100 Harrison Street. And when I got to 100 Harrison Street, there was a full bird colonel gave me sealed orders and a list of men to pick and take with me and go back, which we did. We went back the second time.
All right.
And went back over there. And you know, the funny part about it, most of us that went over there didn't know why we were going to Korea the first time we went over.
Yes.
And as anyone watching this can tell, you don't really know at the time how those people are being treated, how abused they're being.
Yeah.
These other people really were not good.
Yes.
So we knew why we were there.
Well, when you came back the second time, did you get out of the Marines then?
I stayed in the reserve for a good while. There was a colonel at Naval Air Station wanted me to come out, and he said, we'll have a parade and review and muster in front of the flagpole and present medals. I said, no, not interested in those medals.
Yes.
At that time.
Yes.
All I wanted was just a chance to
go
home. Back to work and be home and not duck.
Yes.
And so I went back to Dallas Power and Light Company, and naturally they took me back and put me back to work.
All right, and you retired from the Dallas Power and Light in what magic year?
1987.
1987.
Which has been 20 years ago.
When you retired, what were you doing at Dallas Power and Light?
I had charge of the credit department.
The credit department.
I handled large accounts, large office buildings, made sure that the company didn't lose any money, and it was more of a financial thing that we did than anything else.
All right.
I did disconnect a lot of electricity if it were necessary.
All right, now we've gotten you to the Dallas Power and Light retirement, and I know that you were married and had a family and you lost your wife. I'd like for you to document that for us, your wife's name and your kid's name.
Okay, I married Betty Jean Armstrong in 1949.
All right.
2 years after I got out of high school, and she got out of high school.
All right.
1 year after she got out, she was a year behind me. We had 2 children.
Name them.
The first one was Sherry Lynn Brown, of course. Her name is Watts now, and she works for the Department of the Interior
All right.
in a place called Jackson Hole, Wyoming,
All right.
and lives in a little place called Buffalo.
All right.
I had another daughter by the name of Linda Gale Brown. Both went to Grand Prairie High School.
All right.
And Linda died about a year ago. She came down with some sort of chronic disorder of the liver and had to have her blood cleaned.
Yes.
What do you call that anyway?
Yes.
She had dialysis. She had to
Dialysis.
go on dialysis about 3 times a week, but she died a year ago.
All right. Do you have any grandchildren? And
Right now I have 2 granddaughters and I have great grandchildren.
you name your granddaughters first.
My granddaughter is Kathy Carver in Grand Prairie,
All right.
and she was Linda's daughter.
All right.
And my grandson Michael Antello was also my grandson here from Linda.
All right.
He's driving a truck now, and Kathy's going to school,
Good.
being a graphic artist. I have a granddaughter in Casper, Wyoming, by the name of Stacy,
All right.
and she married a young man and has a son and 2 daughters, 3 daughters now.
All right.
I have a grandson in Colorado Springs that has twin girls, and now they have a son born about 2 weeks ago
Good.
by the name of Carson, and their name is Watts.
Watts.
Yeah,
All right. So you're just really gifted with a heritage that you wouldn't believe. That is
but
really
I don't
great.
have them here.
Yeah, but that's all right. And since you've been here in Grand Prairie so long, I know that you've done many things in Grand Prairie, but the one that you've done me as a great favor was the appointment, to accept an appointment to the Grand Prairie Historical Commission. And how did you like that?
I liked it. And
Wasn't that fun?
And we did a lot. We did a lot of things in Grand Prairie, and posted some historical markers on some buildings that most people don't know where they are or how they got to be. The significance of those buildings, like
Yes.
Graf Chevrolet and the motel.
The
up in-
Steens Motel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of fun to do that. And I made the presentation on a number of them.
Yeah,
Which-
because you were the chair, weren't
I
you?
was the chairman, and so, but the people that were on the committee, the board, they were just great. We'd hold a meeting, and they'd all show up most of the time,
And isn't that good?
and it's good to know. And I told them in the very outset, I said, if you have an opinion, I want to hear about it.
Of all of the historic markers that, since you were on that commission 6 years, was your favorite of all, and you better say the First Presbyterian Church.
Yes, of course it was.
Yes.
And
But you were not supposed to research that. Martha Richardson was, and she went to heaven too early to do that,
Yeah.
and you accepted her assignment, didn't you?
I did, and we had help,
Yes, you did.
but I watched it being installed and covered up so we could make the presentation out right there next to the entranceway to
Yeah.
the First Presbyterian Church. And yes, that is my favorite job that I did, and I had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Along with that opportunity, I considered an opportunity and a privilege to have been a Marine and to have served my
Oh, yeah.
country. And I sure want to throw that in, because anyone that doesn't have anything worth fighting for is in terrible shape.
Now, I'm going to read something to you, because I have this from Kenny Marchant, his honor, because this was published in the paper, whether you knew it or not. And it says, Arvin Brown, U.S. Marine Corps, 1950 through 56 in Korea. And these are the medals that you received. And this is the National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Service Medal with 1 Bronze Service Star, the United States Service Medal, a Combat Action Ribbon, oh, that one was a tough one, Republic of Korea War Service Medal, and the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation.
Yeah.
Now, all of these were brought when Kenny Marchant's staff researched everything, and you were supposed to get these, and those are the ones that you passed on when you got to Navy Dallas here and decided you didn't want to fill out all the papers for those. And now you got part of them, but are there some still missing?
Yes, there are. And there's one that I have right here that you didn't mention on that list, and they gave that to me in 1950 something. It's with a Combat V, signed by General Clayton Jerome, a 4-star general.
All right.
It's called the, what is that?
You can't get to that.
I can't get it now?
No, you
Okay.
can't get to that.
Okay, I can't get to that one. But anyway, it's green and white, and
Yes.
It says on there, in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Marine Corps.
Oh, is that your favorite of all your medals?
That's my favorite of all of them.
The favorite of all the medals is the one with the green stripes on it. We'll have to remember that one.
With the bronze V.
With the bronze V.
And like someone asked me, says, does everybody get these medals? I said, no. You don't get the combat medal unless you've been in combat.
Yes.
And you don't get those stars unless you earn those stars. You can get some of the medals without doing too much.
Well, I'd like for you to tell me the scariest time during your Korean adventure. What was the scariest time, just in a capsule and no more than a minute and a half?
Well, that would be hard to describe.
All of it was rough, I know, but if there was one time when you felt that you were in jeopardy more than you've ever been in your life.
Well, there was one time that kind of stands out. I was in charge of an ammo dump, and we got word that we had the North Korean Chinese volunteers that were going to come down and try to take over our ammo dump and, of course, get our supplies.
Yes.
Well, I immediately called my officer of the day, who in turn told me that he had help already sent for and they were on the way. And it turned out to be the 1st Amphibious Tractor Battalion that he had called. Well, when the Tractor Battalion got there, they have quad 50s mounted on the front.
Yes.
And they have 4 quad 50s mounted on the front.
And that's really power, isn't it?
They cut trees down with those.
Yes.
But they came down the beaches and they turned them around and turned their lights off and waited for our enemy to try to take that ammo dump.
Yes.
And that's the one time I guess it was.
That was really testy, wasn't it?
Well, we sat there in the dark.
Yes.
Our password for the night was Black Magic.
Yes.
And I remember that because that was one of the serious times that
More
we
serious
were there.
time.
And we had one light colonel that came down to check on what we were doing, and he didn't know the password.
Oh.
And he got to stand in front of his Jeep with a Browning automatic rifle pointed at him all that time until we decided he was
okay.
He was all right.
All right, now that we're out of Korea and back here and we've talked about your medals, please look out and in one moment thank the Honorable Kenny Marchant and his staff for everything they did to bring these medals to you.
I would like to give my profound thanks for Mr. John Hayes and Kenny Marchant's efforts to do this for veterans. I think it's very commendable that you've taken your time and effort and gone to the trouble of getting this done for the veterans in your district, and you are certainly to be commended for all of that effort. And it was a pleasure meeting you, with you and your staff.
And getting your picture made with them.
And getting my picture made and shaking hands and getting it with the congressman of my district.
Yes.
Which I certainly am grateful for. And the food wasn't too bad either. It was pretty good. The cookies and the hors d'oeuvres and all were great. And
thank you for thinking about you.
I thank you for
remembering
what
me.
you've done for me. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Now, we've done all that we were supposed to do about the medals. Now, I want to ask you, since you have retired from the Dallas Power and Light, what are a few of the things like Meals on Wheels and working at the I guess the Methodist Hospital, working here in Grand Prairie on everything. What was your favorite volunteer service since you retired?
Well, of course, it's hard to think about what's my favorite. enjoyed being chairman of the Historical Commission quite a lot.
All right.
Served on there as long as they'd have me.
That's right.
My time run out.
We have to dump you out after
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah, they kicked me out after what, 6 years?
Yeah, of good service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did Meals on Wheels for a lot of years, and I enjoyed that, and going in and seeing the people who actually need someone that they can talk to, say hello to, visit with for a minute, and bring them something to eat.
Yes, that was wonderful.
I've seen people that didn't get their meals on time. I've seen people that didn't get their meals, period. But they always, when we could, we did the best we could to serve them. And a lot of times, delivering Meals on Wheels, we'd go out and get them hamburgers if we had to.
Yeah.
Just make sure that they had something to eat.
All right. Do you think Meals on Wheels outweighed your historic service, or
No, and it certainly doesn't outweigh my
your
service
Methodist
to
hospitals?
Methodist Hospital.
Yes.
I went to Methodist Hospital. I was doing Meals on Wheels at the time I went to Methodist, and I asked Stephanie Leopard, who is now the director and was then. I said, "Can you use an old guy like me?"
Yes.
And she says, "Can we use you?" I've got a dozen different places that we could use you right now. I said, "Well, I don't have any trouble getting up early and coming to work. I get up early. My dad taught me to get up early and go milk the cows and get all this done, you know."
Besides that, he was a constable and he was in charge, wasn't he?
He was certainly told me, and he raised me properly, I believe. We gave everything, the vegetables and all away, the milk, the butter, mother churned butter, and gave it to Ms. Marler, Ms. Powers.
You didn't give us your mother's name and her
My
maiden
mother's
name.
name was Pearl Brown, and of course she was a Hollander before she married my father.
All right.
They came here from Kentucky.
All right. Now, we only have a half a second left.
Okay.
So I want to really thank you for bringing us up to date on the real Arvin Brown and how much you mean to this community, how many hours of service and gifts you've given to the community. And I want to personally thank you for accepting a lot of hassle on all of the research that you've done. And you have just been a real jewel. I want to thank you, Arvin Brown. You're really precious, and you rode to work with my daddy to the Dallas Power and Light. I want to thank you for taking care of him, too.
I thank you for having me, Ruthie, very much. Maybe there's still something else we can do.
All right. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do. And it's very important that we document it correctly. And thank you for being with us today.